Hello and good afternoon to everybody. My name is Minal Karia and I am a senior lecturer in executive education within the Faculty of Business and Law at De Montfort University. I would like to say a huge thank you to my colleagues in the Faculty of Computing, Engineering and Media in giving me this opportunity to facilitate this exciting event for Black History Month, saluting our sisters, celebrating Black women in STEAM. This event is being recorded and we would love you to get involved. You'll see a comments button and in this you can add your comments. There will be time at the end of the session with the panel to address some of these. I am very passionate about women in STEAM. Some 30 plus years ago, when I was at school, women and young girls were not encouraged to study any of the STEAM subjects. After leaving school, I decided to study computing and I did this for a year. This was an amazing experience. Whilst I was the only female in class, this didn't stop me from learning. I was asked to teach basic programming to a group of women at the London School of Economics as part of this course. Looking back now and being in the world of academia, it was an amazing and great achievement. On completion of my course, I secured a full-time position in IT for an oil company. This again was an exciting time as more women were joining this field. My experience in this role opened up many doors for me, leading to a career in a diplomatic mission and then now in education, where I've seen a major shift in representation of women within the STEAM industry studying for qualifications with us. Before we meet our panel, I would like to share some recent developments that highlight the importance of diversity and inclusion in the world of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Diversity in STEM education is on the government's agenda. On March 24th of this year, the Science and Technology Committee presented its report, Diversity and Inclusion in STEM. In this report, many benefits are recognised of fostering an inclusive and diverse environment in STEM education, both in research and in the workplace. There is a long-term shortage of talent in STEM, and to address this, there is a need to inspire young people to consider STEM careers regardless of their backgrounds. With the right support and education, any young person can be encouraged to explore a STEM path. While we're seeing progress with this, with women entering, there is a lot more to do, and certainly with ethnic minorities and in disadvantaged students studying STEM subjects, there's a lot more that we can contribute to this. Over recent years, we have seen an increase in female representation in STEM subjects at A-level, but still there is more to do. In 2022, girls made up 44% of all STEM entries at A-level and 51% of science entries, with approximately 31,000 more female entries in STEM subjects compared to that in 2010. However, there are some challenges for girls where they're underrepresented in subjects such as maths and computing. Things are improving in education, but progress needs to be made in the workplace. In 2020, women accounted for just 24% of the core STEM workforce, and a recent report by Women in Science and Engineering stated that women occupy just 16% of tech roles. As this panel will explore, divides in STEM do not just link to gender. Black, Asian and minority groups of women are vastly underrepresented. Black and ethnic minority workers make up 12% of the UK workforce. According to a McGregor Smith review, the employment rate for ethnic minorities in the UK is only 62.8% compared to that for white workers, which is at 75.6%. And another interesting study, according to the Black British professionals in STEM, just 6.2% of the UK domiciled students enrolled onto STEM-related subject at UK universities are Black. Looking at figures for those in high-level employment, representation of Black and ethnic minority women is concerning within the top tech firms. So within the top tech firms in the UK, over 70% of boards and senior executive teams do not have racial diversity. Only 2% of the top management positions are women from Black or ethnic minority backgrounds. Switching to the world of media and the arts, as in STEM, Black and ethnic minority women in the UK have achieved significant milestones serving as inspirational role models. These women have shattered barriers and received acclaim for their talents. They have challenged stereotypes to pave way for more diversity, but again, there's certainly more to do to develop this. A 2018 study by the Creative Diversity Network revealed that only 5.4% of the TV production workforce in the UK had a Black, Asian, or minority background representative working there. It is vital to advocate for diverse representation of women in media and the arts to ensure that their voices continue to shape and diversify the industry, reflecting UK's cultural landscape. Evidence shows diverse teams increase productivity, creativity, and innovation. However, there continues to be imbalances in STEAM. There are a number of reasons why women from Black ethnic minority backgrounds are not choosing to study STEAM careers. This can include psychological factors and variables such as experiences with mentors, academic mindsets, attitude towards STEAM, and family backgrounds. Having inspirational role models, allies, or mentors can have a huge impact in STEAM. Having Black and ethnic minority women in positions that can influence leadership decisions can also encourage others. This will form the basis of our discussions today as we celebrate Black women in STEAM, discuss our own experiences, and tackle what needs to be done to make STEAM subjects more inclusive. I hope you will join me in welcoming our panel members, who I'm absolutely delighted to have discussions with.
Hi, Minal.
Hello, Celine. Yeah, hello. If you can, just let us know who you are and what your background is. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Celine, and I'm currently a PhD research student from the Institute of Engineering and Sustainable Development. My research project centers on modeling the digital transformation of the plastics value chain for Nigeria. And today I will be sharing my journey as a Black woman in the field of STEAM, and in honor of our sisters in celebration of the Black History Month.
Thank you. And next I have Adeze. Adeze, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, hi, my name's Adeze Akande and I'm currently a student at DMU. I study photography and video, but I am currently undertaking a placement year within the Chem Placements and Careers faculty as an assistant. And yeah, I'm here to talk about my journey as a photography student and also my new journey in the career of media.
Thank you, Adese. We do have Timmy who will be joining the panel. She'll be joining us shortly. So, to begin with, Celine, what inspired you to pursue a career and a course in STEAM, and how did you overcome any challenges and barriers along the way?
So, advancing through childhood through to adulthood in my home country, one poignant issue I witnessed was the frequent power cuts. And this did not sit well with me, seeing the negative impact it had on the rates of my personal progresses as well as the progress of the economy at large. And I understood that in order to fully understand the causes of these issues as well as be able to make any impact on an individual level, I would have to delve headfirst into the corresponding field. And that spurred me on to take my undergraduate degree in physics and solar energy, after which I worked for about 2.5 years as an energy auditor in a renewable energy company, as well as commenced my master's in energy engineering here at the Moorford University as well. Afterwards, which I commenced my PhD as well in the Institute of Engineering and Sustainable Development. So for the challenges I faced along the journey, I got enough help from my family members, my friends, and academic mentors lecturers as well in my distinct departments, and I was open about my challenges, and when I felt when I was feeling inadequate and when I felt like I couldn't go on, or I had very difficult issues before me, and they were very happy to render support, and that helped me through my journey.
Just to pick up on a couple of things, when you were studying your masters, how did you feel? Were there a group of women in the classroom with you, or was there, did you feel that you were outnumbered by the males? How did that sit with you when you were learning?
Yes, very much. I was outnumbered because at the commencement of my master's degree in energy engineering, I realized I was the only female on the course.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was quite challenging for me because it made it quite difficult to share my problems or challenges on the course, especially after gap years away from the academia. So yes, I was quite outnumbered. I was the only female at the time.
How did you overcome some of these challenges then to sort of be able to continue the course? And obviously you did, and now you're doing your PhD.
So I think at the time, over time on the course, I got acquainted with another of my coursemates who hailed from my home country, and that was what helped because even if he was male, it also the fact that he was from my home country gave me a bit more confidence, and it made me feel more comfortable with him, and that was how I was able to scale through. I also felt at the time that if there were more women like me on the course, I would have accessed better peer support. The journey would have been less overwhelming for me if there were more women in the course. Yeah, so that was what helped me having someone from my home country.
Right, and something that I'll pick up with the panel, and I like the fact that you've used the word peer support, and we'll come back to that. So, Adese, handing that question over to you. So, what inspired you to study STEAM, and what barriers and challenges have you encountered?
Yes, so growing up, I have always been pretty interested in photography and just the creative arts. I've always been quite like a arty and creative student, just through
Hmm.
my life as a student, like through secondary and primary school. So then when I got my first camera, I think I was about 10 years old, and that's when I really started to realize like there are links between art and photography for me. I would say that one of the main barriers that I face is a lot to do with like financial, as equipment is quite expensive. And the way that I got round this, especially when I joined De Montfort University, is there are a lot of resources that can help you. For example, for any like media students, they have access to AV loans. So I was able to elevate my photography through taking out loaning equipment free of charge, of course, from the uni. And also, I'd say another challenge that I face, and I feel like a lot of people might be able to relate to in the creative world, especially, is sort of the idea of like having imposter syndrome, like sort of thinking that you're not good enough or everyone's work is better than yours and comparing yourself to other people. And I still, to be honest, still do face that some days. Say it still is an ongoing challenge and an ongoing barrier that I try to get over. But I think the best way to get over it is to keep putting your work out there, even if you don't feel as confident about it, because someone will recognize your work. And also just to have that self belief, like I'm doing it because it's something that I love, and just to keep that passion up.
And I like the fact that you've picked up on imposter syndrome, because who's judging us?
Exactly.
Well, we're judging ourselves, aren't we,
Yeah.
essentially? And that's one of the interesting things about sort of stepping out of that comfort zone and saying, well, no, I can do just as well. So that's an interesting one. And how's your journey in your placement been? Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so studying photography and video, finding a placement within that department or industry is actually quite difficult because it's really competitive. So for me, I sort of had to think, how can I expand or like find a way that I can still do what I love, but also still get experience in another field. So that's why I ended up working as the careers and placement assistant in DMU in the chem faculty. And with that, like I've sort of realized the links also between like marketing and photography, and how I can use my work in use my passion in my workplace. For example, like being able to attend events and do photography for the uni, it's really like helping me expand, sorry, and network with more people.
So in terms of having that placement and working with colleagues in Chem, how's that experience been for you?
Yeah, it's been really good. I will say it is quite a diverse office at DMU. I think DMU is a very inclusive university anyway, so I haven't really felt like I've been like left out, or if I don't fit into like a space, because everyone in that space is
Mhm.
very different. Adjusting to office life from being a creative has been quite different, but again, it's all about adaptability. So I feel like I'm enjoying it and I'm doing pretty well.
So then the next area I wanted to explore was, can you, Celine, over to you first, can you share some personal stories and experiences that highlight the importance of representation of Black women in STEAM? And it was interesting to hear that during your course of the study, you were the only female in the group. And then, it didn't stop you from going on, but, you know, if you can just highlight, your personal experiences around that.
Yes. So upon commencement of my master's degree in energy engineering here at the Montfort University, um, I was really happy to commence because I got partial funding from the university to commence the degree. Um, but I didn't realize until the commencement of the course that I was the only female on the course. So, migrating to a new country during the COVID-19 era, taking huge strides to blend into a new academic system and returning back to the academia after years of full-time working was quite daunting for me. And I realized that even though my male course mates were very polite, very warm towards me, I found it very difficult to be open about my personal challenges on the course with them, and to an extent that affected my self-efficacy on the course up until I got very close or comfortable with a colleague, a course mate who was from my home country that helped me through. So like I said earlier, the issue is not having other females like me on the course, to really share my experiences with, and to understand that, there's someone doing what I'm doing, someone like me doing what I'm doing. So yeah, that was my issue. That was where my challenges emanated from. And well, how I dealt with it was through the help of family and friends. I had an academic mentor who has seen me through my undergraduate degree as well, and he was, supporting me through to my master's as well. And my family, my friends who I had, developed close bonds with. So yes, I reached out to them whenever I felt, inadequate, whenever I felt like I was at a crossroad and I wasn't sure of what to do next, or when I had issues with my academics as well. And they were really happy to render support.
And it was interesting to note that having a mentor, even though you were the only female in the group, having a mentor to support you, and that's an interesting point actually, because where we're trying to increase representation of young Black women into the STEAM fields, perhaps having mentors there to support them is a strategy. So that's interesting. To say, what about you?
For me personally, so when I was studying photography as an A-level student, I was the only girl within the class. It was all males and all white males in the classroom. So that was the one time that I did feel like I didn't really have anyone to sort of relate to. But I did have um, a photography teacher, and she was from the BAME community as well. So having her there sort of made me feel like I could connect with someone a little bit easier. Like, first of all, it's always a bit difficult being the only woman in a room, never mind being the only Black woman in a room. So by having someone that looked more like me made me feel a lot more comfortable to be able to talk to her and like go to advice and be more open about my work. Um, I also feel like a lot of the time, like I just said, seeing someone in your position or the position that you want to be in makes it a lot more makes it feel a lot more achievable, because you just think, if when you can see someone that looks like you in that space, oh, I can also be in that space. So I really do think, especially in the creative arts industry, having the representation of Black women is really important, because you don't often see like a lot of Black women in like the leadership positions in these roles, but when you do see them, they really do stand out. I can give an example for me is Dana Scruggs. She's a Black photographer who's someone I really like do look up to, and seeing her career, like she's been at it for a long time, and I would be looking at her work as a student thinking like, how has she not been recognized sooner and things like that. But when you finally do see that they get that recognition, you sort of think all that hard work is worth it. And following someone's career journey in the same industry as you, and seeing their end result and their journey and constantly improving is really encouraging for me.
I found it a really interesting point, and I do agree with you when you said seeing somebody who's like me there in the forefront gives me what and I'll address this to both of you. What, in your opinion, what do they have that makes them stand out, apart from their natural talent and gift for doing what makes them stand out? Because what I'm trying to get to the bottom of, what do we draw out from what we see in them to get other young women inspired to go into these fields? So Adeze, if you want to sort of, what stood out for you? What is it that they have?
For me, I think it's just mainly work ethic and not giving
Okay.
up, because again, like I feel like I keep repeating, but in this industry it is very competitive in the sense of sometimes everyone feels like, oh, I can just get a camera and I can be a photographer, so why is your work better than mine? But sticking at your work and believing at it and just seeing the growth and the journey and putting themselves into places, for example, um sign like what we can do, like as Black women that are aspiring to be in those positions, putting yourself in those spaces, like applying for galleries, like to have your work put up in galleries, because there are loads of opportunities like around London, around Leicester, like just around like the Midlands, around the UK. There's loads of opportunities for you to get your work out there. And I think the main thing with photography is getting that first recognition. So just the non-stop, just keep pushing and try and get your work out there is probably something I've taken from Dana, because that's what she's done throughout the thing. Even though she wasn't getting recognition, she didn't ever stop putting her work out.
And that's a really interesting point you raised about galleries, because currently the National Gallery is hosting an exhibition, and it's all to do with Black photographers, and is going back from sort of photography from the 1960s to the present day, and it's exactly on the type of things that you've talked about, sort of highlighting the achievements of sort of Black and BAME communities who've actually contributed to the world of photography. So that was really interesting, and yes, taking that step and getting your work out there. So thank you, Desi. What about you, Celine?
For me, the key word would be resilience, because having to stand out in a male-dominated field most times could be a sport. So I would say resilience. Like I could mention a list of Black women who have exhibited resilience, and one of them will be Caitlin Johnson. Amidst all the barriers as a Black woman and as a female, which oftentimes feels like double jeopardy, being a Black woman and also being a female in such a male-dominated field. But she just kept on doing her thing, and she kept on putting the work and time that she needed to invest, and it yielded results over time, and it led to the emergence of change. Also, personally, I would say that that's what has led me this far, because there are times when it's very difficult, like from at the early years of my career and my education in the STEAM field. I realized that when I attend conferences, and in lectures, I would try so hard not to ask the not so the fundamental but not too smart questions. I would only ask the intelligent questions, just for fear of substantiating some form of educator bias that my lecturer may have about me as a woman and a person of color, as well as so in that case, I try so hard to resist. I ask these questions probably during coffee breaks or short breaks, and but over time, I as I kept pushing, I became more confident in myself, and I just do what I want to do, respective.
And that's an interesting one, because I think when we look at unconscious bias, and that's essentially what we're talking about. Why do we have to feel that we can't ask those questions. And again, it goes back to that, both of you know, you mentioned imposter syndrome, sort of, if I ask, you know, if I ask something that doesn't come across as if I know, but I'm really pleased to hear that throughout, you know, through that journey now, you know, you're getting to a point where you're thinking, no, I can do that. And certainly Katherine Johnson is an overwhelming example of what women can achieve. I mean, the first human computer for NASA, you know, she was effectively known as the first human computer for NASA. And then, she, you know, up until she died to the age of 101, she was advocating for black young girls to go into the sort of STEM fields. And so that's, you know, that tells us that yes, we can do it, and you've just got to push and push and push. And to think that she came from that generational era where we were talking about segregation, and to overcome those barriers, let alone being the only female in a class of males studying engineering. So, you know, that's an interesting point. What about you, Adese?
Sorry.
When we're talking about overcoming barriers and strategies and overcoming imposter syndrome, what sort of things have you done to try and say, well, no, I'm going to put myself out there and to
I
break
think
those barriers? Yeah.
I think doing things that make me uncomfortable. So, for example, I prefer like art photography rather than like doing portraits or doing like events photography. But to overcome the barriers of thinking that I'm not good enough, I have done some like wedding photography and have gone into those environments where like I really have to push myself, because if I don't get the work done, no one else is going to get it done. So I feel like by putting myself into uncomfortable situations and having to adapt there and then I have to like improve in that point. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Yeah.
does. And I think that's a really good point as well. Sometimes we have to challenge ourselves, and what Celine was saying, you know, as I've become more confident in myself, I'm, you know, I'm not now afraid to sort of say out and ask things that I wouldn't have done before. So that is it. And I think it's reaching that momentum where you feel confident enough to do it. And then that sort of so what can we as women from, you know, black and ethnic minority backgrounds, what can we do to encourage other young girls to come into the STEAM fields? So Celine, what can we do?
Um, so I would suggest that we invest more efforts in identifying and eliminating some form of implicit bias, starting fundamentally from the family unit. And these biases may creep into the family unit from our local cultures and traditions, and they account for one significant reason why women refrain from participating in male-dominated fields like the STEAM. So I would also encourage teachers at the very elementary level of female education to to be more intentional about encouraging young girls to take up STEM subjects, and frequently motivate them with positive and inclusive messages highlighting that the STEAM field is for every and anyone. Also, it will be instrumental to encourage more women to take up um, lecturing roles and leadership roles in the field of STEAM. That would lead to an increase in the awareness of female accomplishments in the field of STEM, and the knowing, for other young women who seek to participate, that they can do it as well. So yeah, that's what I suggest.
It's that's an interesting one, because some of the statistics that I read out there, you know, we are making headway in that. And what it's yes, we need to train teachers, and it's good to have role models there, but it's getting always getting to the crux of, if even if when these things are being done, why aren't we getting more young girls in there? So that's and you know, some of the things that you're talking about, role models, getting teachers trained, more teachers trained to sort of encourage that, and they do, but perhaps we need to just push that a little bit more. But Desi, what about you? What can we do as women to encourage other young women to go into the STEAM fields?
I think quite similar to what Celine just touched on is again having what I've mentioned before, people that look like you in those higher roles. So like having more people from BAME backgrounds as art teachers, as photography lecturers, as like media lecturers, will definitely make a more like inclusive space for people to see, oh, this isn't just something that I have to do on the side. Like, it's actually a very valid career, or very valid, like, even if it's just a hobby to have, and it's something to pursue. I also think probably by having like mentoring with specifically for people from women from BAME backgrounds, by having mentoring with one-on-ones, that could probably make people feel like they have a space, like a safe space to go to, and like share their worries and share their like concerns about getting into the field. Because for me personally, that I can touch on my own experience, is a challenge that I really faced when going into photography, or even coming to university to study photography, because a lot of people would say, like, you don't even need to do that, like, you don't need to study photography to become a photographer, which you don't. But if you're passionate about something, it's worth doing it. And I think by having black women in those positions, and seeing like, oh, they've studied an art degree and they've gone further than that, and now they're teaching an art degree, why must I just keep my passion as a hobby? Why can I not turn that into my career? So I think, like we've all been like touching on, by having people in those spaces and in those leadership roles is really an inspiring way to draw more people in potentially.
I think that's a really interesting point. And at the start, when I was giving you, the audience, a background from where I, my journey in computing, and it's interesting that 30 plus years ago, when I went to school, there were no role models that were females in any of the subjects. It was a very male dominated environment. And if you did want to learn any form of type, you were a typist. Beyond a typist, you couldn't do anything else. And I certainly, looking back, can't recall anybody being encouraged to go into any of the STEAM fields. And thankfully, when I took that step, and I pick up I picked up on your word, did I say they're passionate? I was passionate about wanting to learn computing, and passionate about exploring other avenues. And if I hadn't taken that step because I was passionate about it, would I be sitting in an office typing? Perhaps, there was those what were seemed to be those traditional jobs. You became a typist, you became a nurse, or you became a secretary, and beyond that, engineer, or somebody who can do basic programming, was not even within the thoughts of capability then. So we've certainly progressed there. What about your families? How have you found your immediate family, sort of extended family, their attitudes and beliefs about what you're doing? So, Celine.
Um, for my family, I'd say that they've been very encouraging, and that's one thing that has kept me through. And it's quite rare, because sometimes you get some kind of influence from external parties. Because, for instance, in the African setting, um, it is deemed wiser to invest in the education of a man than a woman, because it sort of looks like sometimes that a woman definitely ends up in marriage. There's nothing much more we can offer to society. So having a family that looks beyond that, and is happy and willing to invest all the effort, time, encouragement that is required to push you through, irrespective of what the culture says and what traditions around you, So yeah, it's been very encouraging for me, and I'm just glad that I've got parents that are that encouraging. Yeah.
Thank you. And you, Daisy?
Yeah, so I would say I have a great support system at home, but it did take a bit of convincing, for lack of a better word, to show them what I'm doing, and that I'm actually doing something. It's not just a hobby. Like, I'm not just going out taking photos. Like, it's actually a valid career choice. I did find at the beginning it was sort of like, oh, but maybe why don't you try going into this, and why don't you try this? But then I think after like educating my parents, because obviously they are a lot older, and like you touched on earlier, it's a different generation, so like different things are different now. So like when my parents were studying, they were very much like study, pass your exams, go to university, do this, but like it was a very more traditional subjects. But I'm quite creative, so I'm educating them and like letting them know like these are the career options. Like just because I'm studying photography doesn't necessarily mean I can only be a photographer. And I think by like showing them the different avenues that I could go down, for example, doing my placement year in something in a careers and placement assistant, and showing them that, see, I am doing digital marketing, and like there are loads of, everything's going digital, everything's going to tech now. So I am going in the right direction, and just sort of convincing them and showing, reassuring them that what I'm doing, there is an end result, and I'm not just going around taking photos. Even if I was, that would still be fine. It's still valid, but just showing my family that what I'm doing is there's an end result to what I'm doing, and I'm working towards something.
I think that's a really interesting point. And Celine, when you talked about sort of cultural beliefs people have, and certainly that exists in the Asian communities as well. And I was quite fortunate at the time when I was at school, and I decided that I didn't want to follow that traditional path. My parents supported me 100%. You know, I said, I want to break from that norm, and I want to do a course in computing. And it's the best thing, and it's led me to such amazing careers throughout my life, and you know, it's always been a positive experience. So I think having breaking those cultural norms is one that we certainly have to look at. And when we talk about what can we do to encourage young Black or BAME females to join the STEAM subjects, and you've given some really good examples there. Both of you have talked about, you know, having role models, having mentors, but I think those cultural norms is something that is changing. Adese, you were talking about how it's a generational things, and it is changing, but I certainly think there's a lot more to do there. And one of the interesting things I just picked up from you, Adese, was you've gone in that right direction. Right? Digital transformation, everything in our world is moving at such a fast pace in that era, and keeping up with that. So maybe, you know, our next generation of young women need to seriously think about, you know, this is this the next career and the career path I want to follow. So some, you know, really interesting points there. You've both talked about, I know Celine, you've talked about Katherine Johnson as being an aspirational role model. What other role models do both of you aspire to, or have you know, inspired you? And I know, Adese, you've talked about a person who's inspired you as well. So are there any other examples of role models that have kept you going in your journey? So Celine.
So for myself, I'd say that I had my first academic mentor, let's say role model, at a very early stage in my life, even before I understood what um, true mentorship is about. I had this teacher during my secondary education who was happy to earmark time during the weekends to put me through nuanced mathematical topics at the time, and he would put me through these topics and leave me with long exercises to solve for less than an hour. So I was timed through it all, and at the time, for a person who was not really comfortable with threading narrow alleys, I realized that I became very comfortable with solving problems. I was keen to, you know, to find what's the answer to this, what's the solution to this, how do we deal with this, and I feel that that built my confidence, that built me up to be successful in the field of STEAM, and that encouraged me as well to take up my education, to continue my education in the field of STEAM. Also, upon commencement of my undergraduate degree in physics and solar energy, I also got acquainted with my first official academic mentor, who was a lecturer in my department at the time. And while he lectured us, I noticed that he was a very cheerful person. He was down to earth, he was accommodating, and he was very passionate and knowledgeable about the future of clean energy technologies. And I saw an alignment there because I felt he was further on the path that I wanted to delve into, and he was a very accommodating person. And I approached him, and he was really happy to be my mentor. And throughout my journey, he's been very supportive. Whenever I felt inadequate, whenever I felt like I was not sure of the next line of action to take, you know, at a very critical crossroad in my life, even towards the commencement of my PhD, he's always happy to help. He's always happy. He's always available. Always happy to help. He also assists with reviews of my manuscripts, my papers. If I need referencing, he's just always happy to do anything that pushes me forward in my career. So yes, I'd say I'd like to mention that as well.
Thank you. And it is you. Who are your other role models?
Yeah, so mine would be not like a person that I've ever had contact with, but it's someone that I studied during my time at university, and it took a bit. So what I found is a lot of the time when you search up photographers that do this, like especially in my field, a lot of the times it comes up with white photographers, or very rarely will I see like a black female photographer. So when I did come across a photographer called Carrie Mae Weems, and I learned about like her work and like how notable her work was, and like how there was like a real pivotal change when she came into the scene. For example, like this was like in the 90s, she realized she's an African American artist, I should start with. Within the 90s, she created a series called Kitchen Table, and within that series she realized that there isn't that inclusivity of black people in images at the time. Like it was all like just no, there was not an inclusive space for black people in those images. So then she created this like really just wow, in my opinion, like really wow series of photographs. And she sort of created a space for more black women to come in and have that space to do arts and represent themselves. Like her work focuses on like race, equality, feminism, like talking about the women experience and the black women experience. So I think it's a really like it was a very impactful um part of the art world that she had in, but I would have never have known about her if I didn't go out and do that research, that additional research, because a lot of the time I just settle with finding not any photographer, but just finding a photographer. But this specific time I just thought, why can't I find someone that I can relate to more? And then finding out about her and all the work that she's done and everything she's achieved has been really beneficial to me as like a role model and someone to look up to.
Thank you. That's an interesting background to her career there as well. Hello, Timmy. Thank you for
Hi
joining us.
guys.
Hello there. How are you?
Apologies. Yeah, it's good to be here at this time.
Okay, I'm just going to. We've just been having discussion in the panel about what inspired Adeze and Celine to pursue a career in a STEAM subject. So, how did you decide to pursue your career in STEAM, and what challenges or barriers did you face along the way, if any?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just kind of introduce myself since
Yeah.
I'm just joining. I'm Tim Lehin, also known as Timmy. I finished from DMU last year. With studied electrical and electronics engineering, and currently kind of working within the energy sector. So yeah, that's just kind of who I am. And yeah, just sort of following on your question, Um, what kind of pushed me towards the direction? I think it was almost by chance. We had a form of a workshop, or you call it like a practical session, where we had to deal with some electronics and those type of technical things. And it was just like an opportunity to try it out, and we all had to do both, so both males and females, we all had to do it. And it just happened that I found it interesting, and that was literally how it all started, and my journey like evolving from that point in time, trying different things around that area, trying to find exactly one niche I prefer, because it's also quite a broad area. So I think mine was just that brief introduction towards practical and enjoyable session, which piqued my interest, and I decided to keep on doing it. Yeah.
And one of the next, and you've actually just come in at the right time. The next, we've discussed role models in education, career. How have you all got into studying the subjects you have? And the next topic that I was going to look at was young black and ethnic minority women in the field of work. So that's an opportune time. So how have you found your journey so far working? Have there been any challenges or barriers there?
Um, Sometimes you could almost say it's up to luck, because I just happen to be in a work environment or culture where there's that drive for inclusivity and pushing diversity is one of the core things we're pushing at. It just so happens I know a few other people who are finding more challenging because that's not what the organization they work with and they find it quite difficult. So you could say it's luck, you could say, it's advancing how we think, or more people getting more aware as to why this is important, and having a lot of people implement that into their businesses, their organizations, their conversations. So personally, I wouldn't say there's anything outrightly challenging, but I think being in this sector of engineering and energy where it's mostly male dominated, you kind of almost kind of you have that expectation just going into it. And being in the industry, I wouldn't say there's no other females. They might not be doing engineering in particular, but there's business and commercial, there's IT, there's finance, there's law. So it's just a kind of, yeah, they might not be doing the too technical stuff, but being in that same industry with them, or having females within the typical male niche industries, it's also kind of like another way where we can incorporate more females if we don't really get more people in engineering per se. But so yeah, I wouldn't say anything particularly challenging apart from the fact that you may not really find so many females in doing exactly what you're doing, just because but still in that process of getting more awareness and all of that.
So, Timmy, and I'm going to open this up to the panel as well. What can organisations and institutions do to address the underrepresentation of Black women, either in the careers in STEAM or even leadership roles within the STEAM sector? What can they do? So, Timmy, over to you first on that one.
Yeah, so just kind of going off the back of what I said earlier is taking that initiative and admitting, yes, we may not have it all figured out, but we want to incorporate this as one of the core things of our business or of our organization, and just start from somewhere. I think a lot of the times organizations just think they need to kind of hit that quota and hit it right off the bat, and most of the time is more like a progression towards achieving that goal. And I think having a mindset to start off, then incorporating as part of a culture, that also gives you a sense of this is how culture is a way of life. So it goes beyond you just hitting certain percentages. It boils down to how you have conversations. If you're in a group of yeah, if you're in a particular group, what sort of conversations having? Are you naturally having conversations that automatically exclude Black people or Black females? So it just comes down to just how you live your daily life, how you do your daily activities at work, trying to factor in the fact that not everybody is like you and some other people are also different. So having that form of culture mindset is one way, one of the main things I think is the best way to approach it. And you have additional things such as going out there, organizing events that cater to these groups. And yeah, just just two main things I would say is that like the main areas to facilitate this. Yeah.
Thank you. Celine, what would you do if you were given this wand and said, right, how are we going to get organisations to promote more Black women in leadership roles in the STEAM field?
So I'd say conversations, because that's the very basic way to get into the minds of people. In addition to what Timi said, I would encourage, the creation of academic and professional spaces where Black women generally, and men as well, could have open and honest conversations about their unique and personal experiences as regards gender bias. These conversations could be tailored towards obliterating gender bias through self-reflexivity and interrogation of one's long-held or background-infused biases. I also think perpetuating such events and creation of such spaces perpetually would also would increase awareness and also create opportunities for men as well to become change agents, because now they're more aware. Now they're convinced, they're more willing to support in the movement. So yeah, that's what I'll suggest.
Thank you. Adeze.
Yeah, so for me, I personally think probably facilitating networking events specifically for Black women to connect with people in leadership positions already, and find out about the types of conversations that are having, and also are who's are the Black women being represented at those conversations, like who's at the table making the decisions, the final decisions. And I think by like having that, it's all well and good like having networking events for everyone, but I think in able to address the underrepresentation of Black women by specifically having them for Black women, or BAME women I should say as well, by including them in those networking events, it will probably make them feel like, oh, I can actually get to these positions. Like it's more, what's the word, it's more like filtered through, so it's like it's just people that look like you and just people that are from underrepresented backgrounds that are all looking to do the same sort of thing. I'd also say, similar to what Timmy said, is the public commitment to like putting out a statement to things, but then it's all well and good having the public commitment, but then it's like, are you nurturing the culture within the organization or the industry? And it's like, how can we nurture that? And again, like what you both touched on, it's thinking about everyone in those conversations, like Timmy said. Will this cater to everyone? Is it just catering to like my counterparts? Like, is everyone going to feel included in this conversation or in this decision that I'm going to make? And I think by really nurturing that culture will make a massive difference within people going into those roles.
And I totally agree. And I do think a good part of it is not just having and everything that you've all talked about. You know, having open discussions, having mentors, having role models, having the you know academic and professional people who represent these Black and BAME sort of women in these industries. But does not our cultural heritage make for a really sort of engaging and growing culture within a work environment? Do you not find that from the culture and heritage you're in? And certainly, Celine, if this, you know, the sector and your PhD, what you're studying, does that not bring a different facet of that education within your field?
Yes, so it definitely does. But that'll be digressing away from my PhD topic, because that's a world on its own. That's a massive world on its own. But yeah, there is a niche for that. I published a chapter in a book recently about digital innovations for the circular plastics economy in Nigeria, and I had a colleague from University of Warwick who published another chapter on the influence of gender in transitioning to a circular plastics economy for Nigeria. So yes, it would definitely go a long way. So for instance, I think if I remember correctly, what she touched upon was how women facilitate circularity for plastic post-consumer products, such that it makes recycling processes easier when there's separation at source, when you separate at source at the point of disposal. So in the settings of homes, for instance, households, we find that women have more influence in such sustainable practices like separation at source. It's easier for a woman to encourage the kids or the husband to say, okay, can we put plastics here? Can we put papers here? Can we put, so from the very basic family unit, women have got influence in all these things, and these are the things we need to discuss. And these are the areas that women create influence and things we need to bring out there.
Oh, thank you. What this is for all of you. What advice would you give to young Black girls who want to aspire to do STEAM, be in STEAM careers, but face discouragement or lack of resources? And Adese, I know you talked about having that facility where you were able to loan out equipment because it's too expensive to buy everything. So, what advice can we give the young girls who want to pursue studies and careers in the STEAM fields? So Desi, over to you first.
Yeah, so I would say do your research first and foremost, like really understand what you're getting yourself into. And just because you don't have all of the high end, top of the end equipment, there are ways to get around it. Like if you are really passionate about being a creative and things, like how when I started, when I didn't have like a backdrop and all the lighting and things, there's ways to work around it. Like you can use like a bed sheet, get creative, like use things that you have around you. Also, I think looking at grants and things that are available, there are quite a few grants that are available to for Black artists in particularly. And there's one called, it's by the Creative Debut, and it's Black Artist Grant, which is what it's called. And it's no strings attached. Grant that you receive where you can use it on equipment, travel, for networking events, or anything you want. It's just to support Black women, especially in the arts, in the creative arts field. Um, yeah, and it just, they basically say that it shows that how Black artists are systematically under supported within the art world by institutions, by curators, by artist led schemes. So I think by using those grants and using those opportunities and finding out about the grants and finding out about potential scholarships and programs that are available to you is a really good way to overcome that.
Thank you. Timmy, what advice would you give?
I would say explore. I'm very, I would say I'm the explorer type. So really try out as many things as possible. Like even within STEM's team, there's so much possibilities and it's quite a very broad area. So I'd say explore multiple parts. Do not put yourself in a box. Try out new things just to everybody. I think everyone should just have the habit of always wanting to try new things because you wouldn't know if you like something if you've never tried it. So yeah, just putting yourself out there, going out of your comfort zone. And yeah, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is just, resilience as well, like really pushing and pushing because you definitely face setbacks. So accepting that that's going to happen and not, be willing to push through everything. So yeah.
Thank you. And Celine?
Personally, I just say to be more intentional about submerging yourself in a closely knit network of other men and women who are successful in the field. I think in present time, the advent of the internet has made it very easy for women to access these opportunities. There are a lot of mentoring opportunities, STEM-related academic workshops, on the internet. So you just be intentional about trying to submerge yourself and take part in these activities.
Thank you. It's just been amazing to hear your stories, and I wish we had another hour because it's just fascinating to get all the different sort of angles from Celine, your background and your journey in engineering, Adese, yours in the creative field there, and Timmy, you're working in an industry now, having been a student at DMU, and some of the key. Whilst I was listening to your discussions, there were some really powerful words that I've picked up on, and some of the key things that you all talked about was, unconscious bias, imposter syndrome. If we wanted to look at ways in which we could improve, setting up focus groups, role models. I think that's a really powerful, when we look at the academic world, having those role models, and Dese and Celine, and you both talked about seeing somebody who looks like me inspired me, and I think that's an amazing, and that is a really, really powerful statement. Certainly at De Montfort University, one of the ethos we have around equality and diversity is breaking those barriers. So regardless of gender, race, background, you've got that equal opportunity, and certainly our pillars, digital transformation, empowering people. This is everything that you've all been talking about. And what I wanted to say was a huge thank you to you all for taking the time, and thank you to the audience for joining us. Good luck, ladies, and thank you again for your contributions to the chats.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Very
Anna.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.